There were many of us that thought it was going to be a Hull repeat, but Oxford United have another 3 points, beating Watford at the Castad by 2 goals to nil. A massive, massively important result in our bid for Championship survival. Connor, back with us. Of course, Connor, you and I were at the ground yesterday, and we'll get into it in just a little bit. Celebrations were absolutely mental, but other than the result yesterday, how was your day?
Yeah, it was good, mate, actually. Yeah. First time in a while that I've gone to a match sober as well. So it was a new experience for the first time in a couple months.
Yeah, usually we're having to drown our sorrows pre-match, so we can make it through in 90 minutes. We've certainly had a few of those this season. Before we get too far into it, folks, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Massively helps us out in the algorithm. Your support has been absolutely sensational in recent episodes. And we'd love to continue that for the rest of the season. Of course, we've got only, I think it's 3 or 4 shows left with 4 matches left to play. So we are certainly closing in on the end of the campaign. Like I said, all your support is very much appreciated. Let's go on to that massive 3 points then against Watford. It was quite funny, Connor. You put in the group chat that a Watford fan was saying, they're on the beach, they're not playing very well. They predicted a 2-0 loss, and all of us in the chat were going, okay, that means we're going to get screwed 1-0, a 1-0 loss after dominating the game. But before we dive into the intricacies, it was a very, very solid performance, bearing kind of maybe the last 10 minutes for Oxford United.
Yeah, I was going to say, apart from the last 10 minutes, it was incredibly comfortable. I'll try and think back and think of result or a performance that was as comfortable as that. And then you could arguably say maybe the Blackburn game, but even then that was a bit
Yeah.
nervy for a good half an hour or so. But yeah, against Watford, I was just not impressed with Watford whatsoever, and I think just the way that they played and their lack of energy completely played into our hands and wasn't something that we were going to complain about, really, was it? So no, overall, it was a great time for our opposition to, for one reason or another, take the foot off the gas, and also the most important thing was that we showed up, which was it was brilliant to see, actually.
Yeah, 100%. So, but Matt Bloomfield named an unchanged 11 to the side that, of course, travelled to Portsmouth. And to be honest, I don't think there's many complaints about that line because it's probably the strongest side we could put out at this moment in time. We said it on last week's show that, barring obviously Brian De Keersmacher, Jack Curry, who I think we mentioned last week is dealing with an ankle injury, is going to need surgery in the summer. But as the warrior that Curry is, Bloomfield has said that, he's keeping himself available, but doesn't want to risk it too much. Not many changes could have been made to that side, really, after as much as we didn't get 3 points in either the Hull or Portsmouth games, probably best side we could put out.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the best side that he can put out with what he's got at the moment. Spencer, I think he's been fantastic overall, covering that left-sided position, something that is generally not his favoured side, especially being a right footer as well. How
Yeah,
difficult it is. It doesn't take a genius to know why being a right footer playing a left back position is incredibly hard to play. But his main duties as being a defender, and even still, he's doing it to a very, very good standard over the past few games where he's been playing in that position. And as Matt Bloomfield said in his post-match press conference, only when Curry will be absolutely needed, or if our hand is forced into a position, God forbid, should Spencer get injured or
yeah,
Sam Long get injured on the right hand side, that we need to make that change.
yeah. It's one of those situations. I mean, I thought over the 2 games, Hideo Terravest, I think would be very unlucky not to start against Derby, but we'll talk about that obviously in a little bit because I thought Terravest was superb over the 2 performances he's had this week. But first kind of, I think maybe 10 minutes we weren't great. There was definitely maybe some nerves had set in, obviously given the situation that the club is in, but Stan Mills darts down the right hand side, wins a free kick in a good area, whipped in by Cameron Brannigan, and a proper melee in the Watford area, and it's poked home by Miles Harris. His second goal in an Oxford United shirt, and his first at Castad. What we reckon, because Miles Harris has had a very interesting couple of weeks. He kind of faded a little bit against Hull, and I didn't think was particularly good against Portsmouth.
No, he's been fluctuating his performances, I think, over the past couple of weeks, which is, when he came in, he looked like that he was hungry and that he was powerful and that he was really a thorn in a lot of opposition sides. And he looked like that he could be a real difference down the left-hand side. So we know that the play is there just for whatever reason, whether it's because, he's coming in and he hasn't really had a lot of first-team football the first half of the season, whether that's playing a factor and that's catching up in him. But it was hopefully that's done him some bit of confidence to get him, albeit a completely scruffy goal. Every goal is a goal. But yeah, I thought that after the goal he did drop off a little bit slightly. So, but I wouldn't have any complaints if he started again on Saturday. Let's put it that way.
So after the goal, Watford, like we said earlier, Watford didn't impress me at all. They looked like a side that were on the beach. There was definitely some, lack of determination to run for the ball, really sloppy passes, all that kind of thing. Typical Oxford, though, we did sit off them a little bit when maybe we could have gone for a second goal early on to put the game beyond doubt, but kind of saw it through to half time, 1-0 up, and obviously we're looking at results around us, and things are mostly going our way. I mean, for what was it, 50 glorious minutes, maybe 75 glorious minutes, we were outside of the relegation zone, which is something we've not had since November.
Yeah, I think that we were outside the relegation zone. We were outside the relegation zone for about 4 minutes on Easter Monday, but being actually outside the relegation zone, as you say, going from one game week to the next, back in November, it's tantalisingly close, Sam. But oddly enough, we'll get onto it, but I think that being in this position isn't actually so bad, and maybe even a better position to be in than Portsmouth. However, yeah, it's for about 50 minutes or so, I especially in that towards the end of the first half, right? You could see by that point, within about half an hour, especially when Watford fans are singing, you're not fit to wear the shirt. Or booing the fact that they're not attacking. Like, that's usually a good sign. That's usually a good sign and a good indicator for you to start pressing and start getting in their faces.
Yeah, and it certainly isn't the first time the side in recent weeks has come to the Castad and has booed their players off or saying you're not fit to wear the shirt. Maybe it's time to crack out the old teams like Oxford memes, because it's just be, see us in the relegation zone. I think we aren't going to fight for those 3 points, but. Start of the second half, I thought far better. There was a definite uptake in the players' performances. I think Bloomfield probably got into the rhythm and said, look, we need that second goal. We can start to claw back some goal difference. And there was also an increase from the fan base, because, the first half it was pretty flat, even after the goal. But I thought it all turned the atmosphere and kind of the players' approach to the game when it kind of spread around that Leicester were losing 1-0 to Swansea. That's when kind of everything picked up, and the East End's been probably the loudest I've heard it all season.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because a lot of people around me were watching the National, and then it came through that Leicester were 1-0 down, and then it was almost within about 90 seconds to 2 minutes you start to hear that atmosphere pick up a little bit, and I thought that the whole stadium actually was the loudest that I've heard it all season, if not in a fair while. Because the performances that the players were putting in, it was reciprocated by the fan base, and the fan base really drove them through, because I thought that we were going to score a fair amount more than we did in that second half, and that East End was going to suck the ball into the back of the net.
There was chance after chance after chance. We had a lot of set pieces. There was even kind of, from resulting set piece and stuff, there were calls around me for Konak to shoot. A little bit of a cheer from one lad because he put a bet on Konak to get a shot on target, which had pretty high odds. And it, like you said, it just felt like this was the game where we were going to really get ourselves out of the goal difference situation we're in. And, credit to the Watford keeper, credit to Watford defensively because they were very solid. They were brilliant in kind of stopping. It was just those the last run from our attackers that that they were denying. Also, there are a couple of questions over some holding in the area. Obviously, being on the East End, I'm right on top of things and have a certain perspective, but it did seem like there was a little bit of excess holding in the area, which I think in previous seasons, Connor, you and I would agree is not a massive concern in sense of referees, but this season referees have been clamping down on it, so potentially we could have got the customary third home penalty in a row.
Yeah, we could have done. When during the at the time of the incident when Stan Mills got shoved over, I was screaming that it was penalty, and then I watched the highlights this morning, and it to be fair, I think the referee did get that one a bit bang on. But yeah, I also thought that at some point, mainly because of the way that the Watford players were winding us Oxford players up in the box, whether it was going for Helek or going for Brannigan or going for Lancashire. I thought that at some point he's going to give a penalty, but it just didn't come, unfortunately.
And like I say, it's one of those things that personally I prefer those not to be given as penalties, but just looking at the track record of referees this season, it's something that they're clamping down on. I mean, just remember back to last season, the one that Kyoso gave away down the fence end. But despite all that pressure, despite all the dominance we had in that game, we just couldn't find that second goal. And yeah, it got to the point, the 80th minute, where I was about to say Swansea, Watford are getting more of the possession. They are. It didn't help that at the time Bloomfield had switched to the return of the back three, which we talked about could never make a return after Southampton, but it did, and it's no coincidence that that's when we were having to absorb more pressure. When Watford stepped onto us, we were inviting the pressure, and it was at that point, like I said, I thought we were going to get a repeat of Hull or Charlton.
Yeah, so did I. When Doumbia came on, I thought like he was running through like a knife through butter, and same with Aaron Kanda. I think it was Aaron Kanda on about 60 or 70 minutes. He just ran from his own half and sliced straight through, and you thought, oh no, is the net is going to nestle at some point. But yeah, returning to the back three, back five, I think that had a lot of fans, I think, on edge throughout the stadium, because we all knew that what was going to come at some point.
But thankfully, a misplaced free kick from a Watford man put it straight into the path of Mark Harris, and it seems that Oxford strikers are on a mission recently to answer some of the criticism they've received on this podcast, because he makes the run. He's quite wide, and I thought this is going to nestle into the side netting on the the wrong side of the post, but thumps it into the back of the net. Lancashire was there for the supporting run if need be, but Harris finds the back of the net, and so glad for Sparky. I think everyone in the ground was elated for him, because the criticism he's got from our fan base, from Welsh fans. He's a player that does take a lot of criticism, and it's so great when he does answer some of that criticism by putting the ball in the back of the net.
He takes criticism from people no more than me, and you know what? Fair play. He stood up when he needed to. It was a good strike. In all fairness, it was to have that sense and anticipation to spring onto the quite horrific pass, quite frankly, and the amount of time that he had to think about what he was going to do is strange, because when he needs to be a poacher, when he needs to be a number 9, he just, for some reason, it won't work for him. But when he has time to think about what he's going to do, 9 times out of 10, you can have confidence that there's only one place that the ball's going to be, and that's past the goalkeeper. So, great from Sparky. It is good that he's got another goal on his belt, another huge, massive goal as well, by the way, because first of all, that goal against Ipswich was a big one to get us on our way back in November, and then that one that fans will talk probably for years about at Leicester, now another massively important goal, to seal a victory for Oxford against Watford.
100% right. it's something that I also point out on Twitter today is that you're right. You look at some of the key examples from Sparky when he's got time to think about it. Like you say, yesterday against Watford, Leicester, the Norwich game at the start of last season, Burton in the promotion campaign. When he's got time to think about it, I don't think there's any other striker I'd want in that situation because he's running away. He's got very few centre halves going to be able to catch him. But like you said, those poachers finishes, Watford, Bristol City, and so on and so forth, is the ones where he struggles.
The most striking example, Sam, is when you compare him with the chance that he missed against Hull, which you would say is typically should be a poacher's goal. He's in and around the 6-yard area, the penalty spot, and he made his run. He timed his run, but he just couldn't stretch out far enough to get the ball, or couldn't direct his foot, position it so that the ball would trickle into the back of the net. But then you think back to last season, the amount of time he had that he thought from halfway inside the Blackburn half, he thought, I'm going to take a volley at this. And he thought about it and he did it. That is exactly the kind of player that he is. That mentality kind of makes no sense for the role that he's supposed to have, which is dictated to by the number that's on the back of his shirt. Yeah. But, goal is a goal. You know what I mean? I'm sure that he's absolutely delighted, and everybody, all the fans and players and staff in the club, delighted for him.
100%. And it is a bit of a specialty of his, which is, like you say, it's weird given the role that he plays and all that kind of thing, because it's so anti what you'd expect a number 9 to do. But that saw the game out, 2-0 win against Watford, and was so close to ending the day outside the drop zone. But as we mentioned, Portsmouth in the 97th minute, the jammiest goal you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
But they smuggle it home, and another fan favourite scorer for Portsmouth in Connor Chaplin. So, two sides in relegation contention have important goals scored by lovable characters. But that 3 points massively important, although it didn't get us out of the drop zone, for our morale, for our momentum going into the last 4 games of the campaign. We're going to talk a little bit about the relegation situation, obviously preview Derby and all that kind of thing, but I just want to bring up 2 players that I thought have had standout last kind of week and a half. And firstly, we're going to talk about Stan Mills. Now, what you'd expect from a winger, he's not blisteringly quick, but in the short bursts of speed that are required in the wide area, he can beat a wing back. He puts a good ball into the area. He can do a little bit of trickery, which obviously winds up opposition defenders. I think a couple of seasons ago that was Tyler Goodrum's breakout season. I think this is Stan Mills' breakout season.
So do I. The boy has come on leaps and bounds in the past 6 to 8 weeks. As I said last week, Gary Rowett has blood on his hands because he's immediately become, he's our most valuable player at the moment with the way that he is, the way that he's so direct, the way that he can set up a ball. We were crying out for ages under Rowett that we needed somebody who could, deliver in a ball, and he's been there the entire time. And I absolutely love this photo. The fact that he's got 4 around him. I believe that's Chagravazzi and Loser, especially Loser, someone that's going to have a lot of interest in the summer probably. And he's just absolutely running rings around them. It was a joy to watch, even over the past Easter weekend. Every time Stan Mills got on the ball against Portsmouth or Hull, we just expect something exciting to happen. And the same was here again against Watford. And come Derby, I'm sure it's going to be the same again because, respectfully, I don't think that this boy should be in a starting 11 for a team that's in the relegation zone or battling against relegation if he can keep up this level that he's performing to, which leaves us in a bit of a conundrum that should we stay up? Are we going to be able to offer him a new deal because he's only got a year left after this? Which will entice him to stay? Or if we go down, there's definitely going to be interest from some decent-ish to big-ish size clubs. They're going to want to take him for a steal because of the league that we're in. So it's going to be very interesting come the summer what happens with him.
100%. Agree with every word you said. He's quickly become one of the first names on the team sheet and one of the undroppables. Like you say, Gary Rowett. I'm not going to go as far as you say he's got blood on his hands, but
that was tongue in cheek, by the way.
Sorry?
I said that was tongue in cheek, by the way, because he did play him. He just wasn't, because of the way that Rowett plays, he just wasn't being used to like how, because Rowett really wants some inside forwards, and that's not what Mills is.
It's you're right. It is interesting. There's a lad that stands behind me in the East End. He said time and time again last year that Rowett's philosophy with Mills seemed to be he'd start him. If he didn't get a goal or assist, he'd then drop him for 2 games, and then the cycle would repeat. And you think, what's that going to do for excuse me, for Mills's confidence and for his career?
Yeah, I completely see that. And I think there was a time, especially through November, December, I think a lot of us were thinking, well, that's probably Mills done, unfortunately, even though he's only been here for about a year or so.
Yeah. So that's one exceptional youngster. Let's talk about the other one who I think there was a lot of jokes similar to like Ben Nelson last year. Don't tell his parent club how good he is. Let's talk about Yunus Konak, because this lad has named man of the match yesterday. This lad keeps going from strength to strength, front-footed. As a number 6, the way he conducts his business is fantastic. His footballing brain at 20 years old, we talked about it with Ben Nelson last year, is sensational. There's so much to like about this player. I can see him being around, I think, the Brentford squad next season. I think he's got that much quality about him.
So do I. I think like it's another player like Lancashire. If you think that we have any chance of getting him on a permanent next season, I think that you need to. Have a quiet word with yourself, and your mate needs to take you down the pub and let you down lightly, because when he was brought in, it was reported by Jerome Sale that the Turkish Football Federation see him as the future of Turkish football, and Turkish football is massive in Turkey. You don't need to know much about football to know that. And this boy he could be a generational talent. He's come on leaps and bounds. Remember his first game, Sam, when he played, he got a yellow card within about the first 10-15 minutes. Like, what is this kid doing? He's running around like a headless chicken. But now you see like how composed he is. Just composure. You can trust him when backs up against the wall, and when there's a counter attack, and when he needs to go back and defend his front line. It's almost like the same level of confidence you have in a number 6 that like Gorin had when we were in League One. Like that's the kind of trust that we have in this kind of player at this level of football.
I mean, the ground he's able to cover is sensational. He's a constant runner. I love the combination of him and Brannigan. There's so much to like about this kid. And like you say, that's so much pressure on a young player. You think of the players that the Turkish FA have got available to them right now. Arda Güler, Yildiz, there have been some very talented footballers that have played for the Turkish national team, or that have, been seen very highly within Turkish football. And I always go back to that quote from the Silversport coach just before Konak left to go to Brentford. The best Turkish player this guy has seen in 30 years. That is some pressure. And, given this is, obviously, I think he played, was it about just under 20 appearances for Silversport before he left Brentford. But first loan in British football, which for, some players can be is a proper sink or swim moment, whether they be born in the British Isles or born elsewhere. It can be such a tricky situation to come into your first loan, because the pitches aren't all perfect, very physical style of football, and I think he's taken to it like a duck to water.
He has, yeah. As you say, he's only 20 and he's come over from Turkey only, what was it, 18 months, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And, learning Turkish is very hard when you're English, and learning English must be very hard when you're Turkish as well, especially when you're at that young age. So, I think he's done absolutely brilliantly. So this experience has been not only developing in his professional game, but also in his personal game as well. So I think he's done absolutely brilliantly. And it's one of those things, Sam, that like when De Kersmacher got injured, we all thought, oh, that's it then, just write the season off. But actually, it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise, if we're honest. Because do we think that if De Kersmacher was still available, would Konak have really been given that opportunity and be playing as regularly as he is at the moment?
It is interesting how we've kind of gone through that over the course of the campaign, because, like I said, when the Kurzmacher got injured, that was just at the point when him and Brannigan were starting to work out how to play together. Obviously, McDonald then came in, and we were like, okay, McDonald's quality, all that kind of thing. He gets injured, and that gives an opportunity for Yunus Konak to start getting some minutes. I think McDonald will get a lot more minutes next season. Obviously, when we haven't got Konak in and around in the circus, obviously he'll be back at Brentford. But the versatility of options in that double pivot role next to Brannigan has been fantastic, and it's a really good thing that Matt Bloomfield's brought to the club.
Yeah, it's everything seems to be falling into place at the right time. Let's just hope that we can carry on for the next 4 games.
Yeah, 100%.
Only 3 weeks left of the season, Sam. Only 3 weeks left.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rest of the campaign. Firstly, let's talk about Derby, because obviously we make the trip for a horrid 12:30 kickoff on Saturday afternoon. Thanks very much, Sky, for that. Obviously, they've been defying expectations of Derby, and 3 wins out of their last 5 games, losing to Southampton and Coventry, who are the informed side in the division. Eustis side are very, very tricky to play against. Obviously, they're in contention for one of those playoff spots. Tell us what we can expect from Derby as our EFL expert.
Well, personally, I think that Derby's playoff ambitions might just be a little bit of a stretch beyond them now. 5 points off with 3 games to go. But, it's a very different Derby County side to the one that we played at the beginning of the season. Honestly, Sam, I think that I'd be a lot more fearful of Derby if they still had Agyman playing. But unfortunately, he's had his ankle injury and he's out for the season. Unfortunately for him, he'll be missing the World Cup. But, this is a Eustace side that are always very difficult to play against, whether they're at home or away at home. They can be beaten. They are a side that do have their frailties. Again, this will just be a side that will look to be direct. And I think that this, especially when we're playing away from home, this is going to be in a stadium that was still going to be, their fans are going to be right up for it. I think it will suit us down to the ground. We can be waiting. We can go at them in the first few minutes and maybe sit back and then look to hit them on a counter. Wouldn't be surprised totally if it's something similar to what we tried to do at Preston and at Leicester, but a lot of those came from set pieces. So yeah, it'll be tough. I think that when you're looking at it on paper, apart from the Millwall game, looking at this one in isolation, it's more likely our toughest game up until that final Millwall game. So, I think that there are points there to be taken, but we're going to have to be right on it. It does also help, you said about it being 12:30 at the same time Leicester play Portsmouth. So I think there could be a fair few nails that are being bitten and a lot of phone checking going on in that away end throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, the ideal one for that would be a draw between those two sides. You can almost guarantee that Carl Morris is going to have the game of his life against us, but
Sammy Schmodix as well, he's going to have the game of his life. Joe Ward as well, he's just going to be whipping them in. Max Clark at the back as well, or Matthew Clark, sorry, he's just going to pop up out of somewhere, the big shit house, but
You can see the script already, can't you? But obviously in recent years, we've got a fairly mixed record going at Pride Park. Obviously last year was one of the dullest draws I've ever seen in my entire life. Or I think, if I remember it right, we got battered in that game. Um, Obviously, season before that was the Mike Harris game. 2-1 win in our respective promotion campaigns, and the infamous Beadle knee slide towards the away end. And I think the season before that was 1-0 loss on the opening day, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, it
So,
was.
you know, all types of results could be expected at Pride Park. Like I say, they are very much have defied expectations. They've looked, this is John Eustace's decision to leave Blackburn last season to go back to Derby is looking more and more justified by the day, isn't it?
Yeah, and not just because of the job he's done at Derby, but also because of what's been going on at Blackburn. But yeah, he has a track record of getting clubs up and around the playoffs: Birmingham, Blackburn, and now Derby. So whether he's a nearly man and not the man to get you over the line, but yeah, as I said, it's going to be tough, but I still think that we have quality there to be able to get something out of the game.
So let's just finish off by talking about the rest of the relegation picture. Because, like you mentioned, at the same time we go to Pride Park, Portsmouth and Leicester play each other. And that's a very important game because, obviously, we are now 3 points clear of Leicester, a point behind Portsmouth as things stand. We've got a better goal difference than Portsmouth, but not a better goal difference than Leicester. What this weekend's results have also done is brought West Brom back into the conversation. They are now just 2 points clear of the drop zone, and we've got a slightly better goal difference than West Brom. Blackburn have been reeled back in, but I think I mentioned in the group chat whether that 4 point gap with 4 matches left will be enough to kind of keep them safe. Charlton 5 clear, again, similar question. For me, it's looking like 3 teams for the 1 remaining spot, and I think Morrison's really turned around that West Bromwich Albion side. Mousinho has got some momentum behind his Portsmouth team, and Bloomfield's got the same at Oxford. So it's going to be a proper entertainer going into the last couple weekends of the campaign.
Yeah, it is. I think you're right. It is only really fighting out for 1 spot now, but I think Leicester are done. Mathematically, Leicester can get relegated this weekend at Fratton Park. But that's only dependent on if Portsmouth get a result against Ipswich, which I'm not sure about you, Sam. I will absolutely be logging into and will absolutely be a tractor boy for 2 hours on a Tuesday evening. But yeah, so long as Portsmouth they don't pick anything up from Tuesday night, we just have to bet a Portsmouth result in 1 game. That's all we have to do. But you're right, because of the results over the weekend, like West Brom have been dragged back into it. Blackburn, you say that there's 4 points there between them and us in 22nd. Their next 2 games are against Southampton and Coventry. Now I know that Coventry drew 0-0 with Sheffield Wednesday, and hats off to Sheffield Wednesday, but 2 teams you don't really want to be facing is Southampton at the moment because they're steamrolling teams over, and then Coventry, who by that point I'm fairly certain they'll get promoted this weekend. But by that point they'll be going for the title, so they could get dragged back into it as well. So it's amazing what these results have done, and suddenly it looked like that Blackburn and West Brom that they were sorting themselves out, and it was 3 for 2, and now it looks like that it's becoming 4 for 1 spot. So the more teams that we're able to drag into it, the more exciting and the better probability and chances that we have of staying up. It's certainly going to be exciting. And I said a few weeks ago that I was excited for the run-in. Now it's becoming more like a possibility that we do have a genuine shot of staying up. My bum's starting to... It's squeaky bum time, Sam. It's squeaky bum time. Yeah. Just as long as we're not in that away end and we're looking at our phones and we've got our earpieces in, listening to what's going on at Ewood Park, what's going on at Fratton Park. Just as long as we're done by then. But it's going to be one hell of the last 4 games.
Yeah, definitely. It's only really, I think, in the last week or so that I kind of looked at the calendar, like you said, went, oh shit, we've only got 5 games left. This is then my nerves multiplied. Let's just quickly touch on, because I think you and I there have just both agreed that we think Leicester are done and dusted in this division. I Not to say we told you so, but we have been, I am waiting for our apologies in the post when, a lot of EFL viewers saw that we had sacked Gary Rowett. They were thinking, Oxford had done and dusted, Rowett's the manager to keep you up. And then, when Rowett went into Leicester, we're thinking that, that was them safe. It's really not panned out that way. Would you say that? Do you think that Leicester were done before Rowett had gone in, or do you think that because it's clear that these players have not performed up to their ability time and time again, but at the same time, I mean, we know Rowett ball better than anyone, and we know that combined with out-of-form players is a recipe for losing game after game after game and having woeful performances. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, actually, the saddo that I am actually listening to BBC Radio Leicester, like their post-match phone-in after their game yesterday. And as much as the board is coming into flack, which is quite right, and as much as the players coming into flack, Rowett's been coming into some flack over the past few weeks as well for the fact that, surprise, surprise, he doesn't adapt, he doesn't change. There's only one way that he plays. It's very one-dimensional. Because there's only so long that you can blame the players and that fans can blame the players when a new manager comes in. But when you're not seeing anything different and when nothing's changing, that's when fingers also start getting pointed at the manager. When he came in, I thought, okay, there's Gary Rowett. There's enough player quality in there to get them out of it. But there's been a few like George Ellick and Cam Fallow who said that he's just not the right man for that size of club, almost that the club is too big for him, that the players' egos are too big for him. And that's turned out to be absolutely correct, because it's been reported that a lot of those players don't have relegation clauses, where I can guarantee like at Oxford, at Portsmouth, they absolutely do. So they know that they're not losing any money whatsoever should they get relegated. So why, in their minds, why should they care? And the fact that it's that Leicester are looking down the barrel of League One football is just absolutely mental. Almost 10 years, so they could get relegated 10 years to the day that they were lifting the Premier League title.
Mental.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about Rowett as well, because again, obviously former Oxford United manager, I think we both rate him quite highly on a human level. Seems like a good bloke, although obviously we had our issues with him not coming over to the home and away support after certain games. It's interesting that, because I've heard Callum Fowler talk about, he thinks that Leicester is too big a club for Gary Rowett. I was thinking after, seeing the result that Leicester had on Saturday, and maybe this is an overreaction or whatever you might want to say. I think Rowett might have lost his spark at this situation, because obviously the situation we were in the first 6 months of the season, it's because of Rowett that we are where we are, that we're in the relegation zone. Some of the results he got, the way he's would set up to draw games either 1-0 or 0-0. I've not seen anything from his time at Leicester to make me think, no, actually, like you say, it's the players that are letting him down and not Rowett just not being, losing his spark at this kind of job now.
It's interesting you say that, because there have, across the footballing podcast community, there have been questions that I've seen them asked, like, have the old school firefighter managers gone? Are they going extinct? And I'm sure that's not what when he started out in management, that's not what he wanted to be, the firefighter manager. But whether that is just generally going, unfortunately, that's usually the last throw at the dice. That's we need to get someone in now to sort us out, and players just aren't responding to it, because the players know that they have the power, really, and the manager doesn't. So when you have someone that goes in like that, they want to stamp in authority quickly, one way or another. But yeah, I see what you mean. That is Rowett losing his spark. I don't think so. 'Cause I think that he's still in there. There is still a very, very good football manager. That he has a proven CV over what he can do with a championship club, given when the conditions are right. Our conditions were right, also you could argue, but you know, it was always going to be a task with us. But is he going to get another job in the championship after this? I think that he will do. I still think that he has a future in the championship, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him take some time out and go back into punditry, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, take time to restock and reassess and see where his career can take him.
I think he only signed a deal to the end of the season, I think, when he went into
He did.
Leicester. So it's, like you say, definitely a case. I mean, there's a number of Leicester players that are going to be leaving that club at the end of the campaign as well. So it might be a humongous rebuild for whichever manager goes in there after Gary Rowett. Thank you, Connor. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching this week's episode of Walking the London Road. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below on the relegation situation, on the win over Watford, and anything else that you want to tell us. Also, please remember to subscribe and like the video. Massively helps out in the algorithm. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it massively helps us out, and your support has been sensational. Follow myself and Connor on Twitter at you can see on screen, and we'll see you next week for a review of our trip to Pride Park.